To me, it's about the audience, right? So when I'm preparing a talk, I think about someone specific because if you imagine a group of people, 100 people, 200 people, it's really hard to think about their personality and where they come from. But if you have a friend or a colleague or someone who you have interacted with, and then you visualize that person, and then you try to explain the concepts to that person, like what would be the best path to explain a concept or teach something to that specific person, it becomes easier to create or to design a good talk. Now, there's also the element of, entertainment. You should jump to something interesting at the very beginning of the presentation. What I tend to do is to grab the attention of the audience by showing something they were not expecting to see, but that I can relate to the topic at hand. So, for example, in my most recent talk, what I do is I talk about AI from the perspective of how to use AI to build software. And so one of the problems with AI is that they hallucinate, right? They say these things that are false, but they say it in a way that's incredibly believable, like with a whole lot of confidence. And so I show a hallucination that's really funny. It's about pizza. Hallucinations. Have you seen something like this? This one is suggesting to put glue on pizza, but at least it says non-toxic glue. So I show that at the beginning, and then I have the attention of the people, and I'm not really talking about how to build software with AI at that point, but I have shown something funny, for example, in this case. And that's it. It's very easy to create a segue to the next topic, which starts to be technical. So that's one way, and it could be something funny. It could be something just impactful. Right? Anything goes, right? That helps. I'm not saying that every single talk should be like that. It's just at the beginning of the talk, you should say something interesting and make people wonder, where is this going? Or actually make them, feel something. So they get in the zone, and now you have their attention. They're going to pay attention to you and what you have to say. I think one of the most important things that I do is I don't have a slide that's about me, like at the beginning of the talk. Like that's very typical. Like you would say about me or who I am and this kind of stuff, and then they show off all the credentials and that's fine. I'm not saying that's bad. That could help building trust. Like why should I listen to this person, right? But I think another way to build trust is by showing confidence and skills, right? So I avoid having a slide with my credentials, right? However, anytime I can, I show, for example, or I tend to use my books as examples, and that gives me a credibility because it shows that I have created something, I have worked on something, and I have spent time working and creating something, and hence, maybe I should. The audience would say, like, maybe I should listen to what this guy has to say. Maybe he knows what he's talking about. At least he has the discipline to create these, to write these books. And I prefer that approach than having a slide with all my credentials. And of course, there are figures that are like famous in the industry, so they need no presentation. They don't need to do anything of this. Of course, that's not my case. I have to say something. Usually, I have my title and something in the opening slide, right? But other than that, I jump directly into the topic. I don't want to waste anybody's time. The talk is not about me. It's about a certain technical topic, and people in the audience are there to learn about that topic, not to learn about me. True. Yeah, now that you mentioned that, I do end my presentations, almost all of them, with kind of a conclusion. I never put like a slide with conclusion, right? But I just say it, and there I have a slide that either links to a previous slide that was at the very beginning, shown at the very beginning of the presentation, or something that's definitely conclusive, right? Without saying, okay, as a conclusion, we have the point number 1, point number 2, and point number 3, right? I don't do that. I would just say it. And then I go to the last slide, which is like a big thank you and my contact information. And I use, because it's technical, so I try to close with very technical vocabulary as well. So I say something that sounds like geeky or technical. I say, these are my coordinates. The documentation, mariadb.com/docs. These are my coordinates. Thank you. Right, and that's you can see my email and social media handles and this kind of stuff. I think that works pretty nicely. It generates impact, and it's a good closure. Yeah, well, for a beginner, I would say avoid bullet points. Like, try to. Sometimes you have to, okay? You have to, fine. But you should have a good reason for having a whole lot of bullet points that you're gonna read, okay? I think that the less text you have, the better. So the slides should be easy to understand. They should complement what you are saying, but they shouldn't be what you are saying. Because otherwise you can just share those slides and people can read those at home, right? And or maybe throw them to an LLM and an AI model and create a text that tells them what they need to know from some bullet points. I don't see much value on that. Or maybe there is value because, of course, when a presenter is showing bullet points and they are talking about something, it's much more than the bullet points, right? They add content to it. However, it becomes a tool for the speaker. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that it could become a tool for the speaker and the audience as well. And then you win on both sides, right? And so try to think about the audience, and the slides should be supportive of what you are saying. It shouldn't be what you are saying, but they support and illustrate what you are saying. I have experimented with maybe webinars. I don't think talks as such, but webinars in which I have photos. And so, for example, if I'm going to say Amazon Web Services, maybe I'd show a map of the Amazons or, something like that. And it's associated to what I'm saying. Sometimes that works well, sometimes it doesn't. So you need to think about it, evaluate, and see how it goes. Well, practice, yeah. So you have to do it several times. I rehearsed my talks several times. I leave space for improvisation. I don't memorize phrases. I might memorize 1 or 2 phrases sometimes for my talks, but what I memorize is the flow, the ideas on each slide, the transitions especially, and where things are going, right? And then I do the presentation here in my office, and I try to mimic what I'm gonna do live, and I leave a space for improvisation. Another way that works for me, at least, that I use for preparing is I go through the slides, and I don't. I'm not talking about the topic. I'm not doing like a presentation as such here, but I go through the slides and then I think, hey, what am I gonna say at this point? And before clicking right to the next slide, I try to visualize it in my mind, like what's the next one? How should I connect it? But without having to do the actual performance work, right? Like I'm not giving the talk. I just think about it. What is it that I'm going to say here? It's about this. Okay, next, right? And that's a quick way to rehearsal. Very effective. Effective with time, basically, because you can do it much quicker than if you have a talk that's 45 minutes long. then you can do it maybe in 10 minutes, right? So try to do that. That just works. But yeah, practice, practice, practice.